Good morning. Same dressing gown, same hat, different house. Mr. M and I have come away on holiday to the New Forest for a week in a cottage in the woods, and I'm very excited about that, and I thought that I would film a reading vlog while I'm here. Now, this is a holiday, and it is the first time I've taken off this year that doesn't relate to being severely ill, so I do plan to enjoy that, but I also enjoy filming reading vlogs. So if this one is a bit itty-bitty, please excuse it, I am away, but let's see how we get on. I am laughing at myself because I can see how many books I have brought with me. We got here just as the sun was setting last night, and as soon as we got here, we put on Wellington boots and went for a little walk because otherwise it would be dark. And you will be pleased to hear that I found the nearest cat within about 2 minutes, which was great. And we drove down, I say we, I don't drive, Mr. M drove down. We were able to borrow his mum's car. She has an electric car now, so it was the first time driving an electric car, which was very exciting. And because we came in a car, we weren't as restricted as we would be if we had got on a train, so I didn't have to whittle down my TBR too much. I just basically ran around my shelves with a tote bag and put books inside, and I admit I was in a bit of a frazzle because I was trying to finish all of my work before we left and I was a little bit stressed. So I don't quite remember what books I've put in this bag. This is how many books in my Wigtown Book Festival bag from a few years ago. Yeah, this tote bag, it's full. I'm not going to read all of these, but we'll see how many I get to in this video. I haven't really gone for a theme with this set of books. It was basically vibes. You know, what books do I think would suit this time of year? That was what I was thinking of when I was rather chaotically looking through my shelves. So let me show you what I have brought. I won't talk to you in detail about the blurbs because I'm going to be reading some of these and talking to you about them. But yeah, number one is this one, which I think is the one I will start with. It is Ghost Music by Anne Yu. I adored her first novel, Braised Pork, which I read in 2020. And this one is about mushrooms and hauntings. I don't think it's a particularly scary book, but it's more about unsettling, unspoken things. And I just hit my glasses with it. There we go. I've brought Leila and the Blue Fox by Kiran Millwood Hargrave, illustrated by Tom de Freston. I adored their last book together, Julia and the Shark, and have loved their titles independent of each other as well. I'm sure I'll get to this one. Then I succumbed to the hype, folks, and I bought this, which is I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek, Sehee, which is translated from the Korean by Anton Her. This is a non-fiction book, mostly told in script, the author having a conversation with her therapist, or multiple conversations. And just, this book is everywhere, and I wanted to see what, you know, all the fuss was about. I brought my copy of Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata. This is a collection of unsettling horror-ish stories. I think more in the vein of Earthlings than Convenience Store Woman. So I would like to maybe dive into this one. I also brought this short story collection, which is called Animals at Night by Naomi Booth. Again, I think these are slightly unsettling, and each story relates to a person's relationship with an animal, maybe a pet, or it may be a type of creature that they feel affinity with in the wild. Then we have got a poetry anthology. This is the Forward Anthology. No, it's not. The Forward Book of Poetry 2023. This is my favourite anthology that comes out every year. It's my favourite poetry prize as well. It's just great at showcasing the best work being published at the moment. Yes. Then, obviously, I thought Moomin Valley in November would be perfect for this time of year, but I still haven't read any Moomin books, and I'm not sure that this one is the best one to start with because the Moomins aren't in it. They have gone away, are asleep, I'm not sure. So I thought I would read Finn Family Moomintroll first before reading Moomin Valley in November. But, you know, I've mentioned this before, but how beautiful are these books? They're just so pretty. This is a fantasy. I don't read too much fantasy, but I was contacted by the publicist of this book who said that she thought I would really love it because it's queer and disabled, and it is a King Arthur inspired tale called Spear by Nicola Griffith. Then we have Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. This is a novel focused on the wife of a tutor who's been accused of sleeping with one of his students. I think that is the premise. I didn't want to know too much about it because, again, this was quite a hyped title. I wanted to go in not knowing very much. Then this is Indelicacy by Amina Cain, and for some reason I'm getting my year of rest and relaxation vibes from this book. It's set in an undefined era and place where a cleaning woman in a museum of art aspires to do more than simply dust the paintings around her. She dreams of having the security and time to use her mind and become a writer. I mean, it does sound like she wants to do things, but I think that dissatisfaction in trying to work out the meaning of life combined with art chat, that's why it's giving the Moshveg feelings. I also brought down this collection of poetry, which is a collection of work by Muslim writers, and it's called Halal If You Hear Me by Fatima, Asghar and Sophia Elhillo. Well, they are the editors of the collection. I know that Fatima's novel has just been published in the States, and I don't think it's published here until next summer, and I'm really cross about that. I might have to purchase the US edition because I really like their poetry a lot. Anyway, this is a great way to discover new voices. Then I've got a couple of crime books. This is The Silent House by Nell Pattison. This is an own voices deaf writer writing about a member of a deaf family being murdered in their home and then an interpreter going to talk to them as part of the police investigation. I believe that this interpreter, Paige Northwood, is the main character in this, and then also we follow her through a series as well. So if I like this, there are other books to read, which is cool. And I'm just really excited to read own voices disabled crime writers because I haven't found that many being published. And then another crime book is The Master Key by Masako Togawa, which is translated from the Japanese by Simon Grove. This is a set of apartments for ladies in Tokyo where there is a key to each door, and each door hides some kind of secret. So a woman who has buried a child, a scavenger driven mad by ill health, a wife mysteriously guarding her late husband's manuscripts. Then the master key opens 150 rooms, has been stolen. This was first published in 1962. So that one is a vintage. And then finally is this one here, which I've been meaning to read for years. This is Aliya Whiteley's novel, The Loosening Skin. Every time I look at this cover, I think this illustration looks like Amanda Palmer, and it weirds me out that it's not Amanda Palmer. This is a novel about a world where people change skins. I don't want to know more than that before going into it. So yeah, those are all of the books that I have brought with me. That's a fair few, isn't it? Maybe I'll insert a cutaway here so you can see it outside amongst the leaves as God intended. We will see how many I get to in this video. We are in the New Forest during pannage season, which I filmed last year, because if we go away, we try and come to the countryside at this time of year. It's when all the farmers let out their pigs to roam free. The New Forest is a really interesting place. I recommend Googling it. It is very different to other parts of the countryside in the UK. Cows and ponies roam free, and then at this time of year the farmers release all the pigs because all the acorns have fallen down, but the acorns are poisonous to the ponies, so they release the pigs, so the pigs eat the acorns and then the ponies don't get sick. It's very cool. So hopefully we will see some pigs when we are here, and obviously I will show you that if we do. Right, Mr. M is still asleep, so I'm going to take him a cup of tea and I'm going to start reading a book, and I'll check in with you later. Exactly. Are most of these talking segments going to be me in my dressing gown? Yeah, probably. So I hope that that's okay. But I'm using early morning time. I don't think you can tell how early it is because this camera is making the surroundings look much lighter than it actually is, which is very kind of it and I'm grateful. But I am using very early morning time to read and to come on here and talk to you because I tend to get up 2 to 3 hours earlier than Mr. M at the moment. Not because he sleeps a lot, but just because I don't sleep very much because my brain is thinking about too many things. So I am distracting myself in the early mornings with books and then checking in with you. So I have read Ghost Music by Anne Yu and I love this so much, and I'm so relieved because this is her second novel and I loved her first novel, and second novels are so hard, they're so difficult, and often they kind of fail a bit because of the pressure put on writers for that second book. This is not the case here. I actually love this more than her first book, which was Braised Pork, but like with Braised Pork, this book is a bit weird and therefore it's going to be a little bit difficult to talk about because walking through it, reading it feels like walking through it and feels like walking through a dreamscape. So this is a novel about a woman called Song Yang who is a piano teacher, and she really wants to have a child with her husband, but her husband won't entertain the idea and she's not really sure why. And then her mum-in-law comes to stay with them and she starts finding out all these secrets about her husband's past. It's kind of a ghost story where ghosts are mushrooms. And they start receiving these mushrooms in the post from someone they don't know, and at first she's really scared to eat them, but then she starts eating them. She becomes really obsessed with getting these weekly deliveries from a stranger, coming up with really fun ways to cook the mushrooms, and I really enjoyed that premise. And then suddenly they stop arriving and she doesn't know why, so she goes on a quest to find out where these mushrooms are coming from. And mushrooms grow out of dark places, and it's almost like she's turning into a mushroom herself, emerging out of the dark as she learns more about her husband and his family. The mushrooms are a representation of trauma, really, how they're causing damp and they're causing things to decay, but also life sprouts from it, and all of this wonderful imagery. The mushrooms in here are almost like a form of bioluminescence because they make everything bright orange, and I love the juxtaposition of that darkness and light, and I underlined quite a few passages, so let me find one for you. Okay, this one's not about mushrooms, but it's one that I underlined. Not knowing what to do with my body, I sat down and played a B-flat minor chord. If I had a favourite chord, this would be it. My mother always used to ask me, can you play that chord? The one I like, the one that sounds like it's been snowing all winter. There were hundreds of bright orange mushrooms glowing in the dark. They'd burst through the plastic and grew upwards in layered clusters like those I'd seen in the courtyard. The species towards the inside of the cabinet had caps that were flat and white. All the other ones were smaller and rounder. Together they looked like a swarm of jellyfish floating through the night. The tone of it made me think of the short story Sleep by Murakami. I've fallen massively out of love with Murakami's writing in, I don't know, the last few years, quite a few years now, but that short story I still absolutely love. And if you've read it, I think it's available online for free. If it is, I'll link it down below. But it's that unsettling, almost threatening, but at the same time beautiful atmosphere. Like that atmosphere is in here and you feel like you're inhaling it all the time when you're reading. I loved it so much. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, definitely pick it up. I think this may be one of my favourite books of the year. It is one of my favourite books of the year. I know that. I don't need to do the suspense thing. It is one of my favourite books of the year. I loved it. Okay, today we are going to drive to a place to go through a walk through the woods, and I just love the ridiculous names that you can find in the countryside. To be honest, you can find everywhere, but they're especially abundant in the countryside, and it just makes my heart really happy. So today we are walking near somewhere called Mouse's Cupboard. Yeah, that's the name of a place. Through somewhere else called Sawley Bottom. I mean, it just tickles me. It tickles me. So that is what we're going to do today, and I will check in with you when I've read some more. very much camouflaged with these armchairs. It has been raining a lot, but that's cozy and good reading weather, so I don't mind. Plus we have been going out for the rainy walks, and it's always nice to come inside even if you're soaked and, you know, get into your comfies and all of that stuff. And we're off to an amazing start with reading. I mean, a continued amazing start with reading. The Silent House by Nell Pattison is so good. This is the best crime book I have read this year. Can you see it on my face? I'm smiling a lot. This just makes me happy because it gave me Frida Klein vibes, and that's what I'm always looking for in a crime book. And as I mentioned, this is Own Voices, disabled author, and that thrills me too. So Nell has been doing BSL interpretation for a very long time, then also started losing her hearing in her 20s. And our main character, Paige, is a BSL interpreter and is the only hearing member of her family. She also has friends who are the only deaf people in a hearing family, as well as families where everybody is deaf, and it's really about deaf community. And I just adored this book, and I'm so happy that it's the first in a series. But now I'm in a dilemma because I really want to read the next one, but I don't think that if I order it now it will arrive before we get home, so I'm gonna have to wait and pick it up as soon as we get back and then dive into the rest. All 3 of the books are out, which is great because you don't want to be waiting for, you know, years for the next one to come out. Anyway, we are following Paige, who is a BSL interpreter who has been hired to attend first this crime scene, then subsequent interviews at the police station regarding the Hunter family. So the Hunter family, they're a deaf family. Their youngest daughter has been murdered. In the father's home, the parents are divorced, so the father and his new partner and their kids were all in the house together. They were asleep. They didn't hear anyone come into the house, and the police are trying to assess who's telling the truth, who is lying, all of that stuff, because there is some questionable things going on in the background. The issue that Paige is having is, one, this is obviously a very difficult case. It's a young child who's been brutally killed, but also because this is part of the deaf community, she knows this family, not hugely well, but her sister in particular is very close to the mother of the family, who obviously wasn't in the house at that time. And she's trying to work out where boundaries are and what she can and can't share and how she should be feeling about everything. But she knows that she has to do this job, because if she doesn't, the police will be waiting 5-6 days to get an agency, and the mystery will not be as likely to be solved because people will be able to come up with excuses, cover their tracks by this time, etc. There's just so much in this book that I admired. The mystery is great, the pacing is wonderful. I love being introduced to all of these characters, but as with any Own Voices disabled deaf book, the joy is in the small details that they just get right, talking about the societal elements when it comes to disability and deafness, and all of the everyday things that a non-disabled or non-deaf writer wouldn't think to include because they're not intrinsic to them, you know? So I just appreciated it for that, on top of it being a brilliant story. I did guess who had done it, but not in an infuriating way, in a satisfying way. So that pleased me a lot. The next one is called Silent Night, I think. This one is Silent House. I can't remember if I even said that in this clip, but I adored it. And if you enjoy Frida Klein and Nikki French, I mean, I definitely got the Frida vibes. It's so good. Okay, today we are going to go for a walk in Fritham. I'm hoping that there will be pigs there because there often are in Fritham, but we shall see. And I'll come back to you when I've read my next book, which I think is going to be The Moomins. Let's go. there were no pigs in Fritham, but never mind. Hopefully we'll see them somewhere else. And I have read the Moomins, and I know that the Moomins are not pigs, they are Moomins. They look slightly like hippos, but you know, could be said to look a little bit like pigs, maybe. So maybe I've got my pig fill from reading Finn Family Moomintroll. I decided to start with this one because I think it's a good introduction. To be honest, I'm not sure I need the introduction. So whilst I haven't read the novels before, I have read abridged versions when I was very little because I loved the anime series in the 90s. And after reading this, I did go on YouTube and watch the first episode and was very surprised at how much I remembered. I sang along to the theme tune, which I won't do here, and I'd forgotten that the narrator of Moomintroll is also the person who narrated Noddy, and I remembered that so vividly when I heard her voice again, because it's a woman who does Moomintroll's voice. Anyway, this is just like the warmest hug, which I knew it would be. This is set over the course of a whole year, actually, but we begin with the Moomins going into hibernation, going to sleep for the long winter, then waking up in the spring and going on lots of little adventures. It's more like a short story collection, to be honest, little snippets of their lives throughout the year. Hands up if you used to have a crush on Snufkin. I definitely did, and remembered that when reading this book. It's just delightful. It's like Alice in Wonderland meets Winnie the Pooh. Those are the vibes that I get from it. It's wholesome, and I was going to underline things when I was reading it, but I didn't have my pen next to me, and I was enjoying it so much that I couldn't be bothered to get up and go get my pen. So let me just find an extract that I can read to you. I think something that's really lovely about the Moomins is that it is a lot about found family and friends just staying in your house and that being fine and usual. Moomintroll's mother and father always welcomed all their friends in the same quiet way, just adding another bed and putting another leaf on the dining room table. And so the Moomin house was rather full, a place where everyone did what they liked and seldom worried about tomorrow. Very often unexpected and disturbing things would happen, but nobody ever had time to be bored, and that is always a good thing. The spirits that haunted the trees sat combing their long hair, and on the north side of the tree trunks, baby mice dug tunnels amongst the snowflakes. I don't think that you can read that and not have a smile on your face. What I also love about the Moomins and brilliant children's books in general is that blending together of disturbing and quaint. I think that's why it works so well. It is so charming, but then also really twisted things can happen. But because you know that they're going to pull together, it's going to be fine. So you can handle that darkness. And I think that that's really important in middle grade fiction in particular, to have that element of danger which children understand so well, to not patronize them, you know. So one of the adventures that they go on in this is that they discover a hat which happens to be magical, and they don't realize that anything you put inside it will turn into something else, and sometimes that's fun and sometimes that is scary. I really enjoyed it. Today we are going to go for a walk along the coast, from Lymington to Keyhaven, I think, in case that means anything to you. There are lots of interesting birds along that part of the coast because there's lots of marshland and stuff. It's quite blustery, but hopefully it'll be a nice day. Let's go. I don't think that you could really tell how windy it was in that clip. So let me insert a clip here with the wind. If you're a headphone user, you might want to just pull the headphones away from your ears a little bit. But this was how windy it was yesterday. I think it was 50-mile-an-hour winds, and we were very, very exposed. So it was definitely a workout doing that walk. And on the way back, when the wind had calmed down and we were walking through the marina, I saw this guy who was repairing a mast, and I just want to take my hat off to this guy because I don't want that job. no thank you. So that was the walk we did yesterday. It was very windy and also very wet towards the end, but it was fun. And I am here to talk to you about 2 more books, and these ones are not ones that I loved as much, sadly, but you know, that's going to happen. So I read I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek, Sehee, translated from the Korean by Anton Her. This is a non-fiction book where the author is writing out sessions that she had with her therapist. And at first when I was reading it, I was thinking this is a bit odd because you wouldn't remember all of your conversations in this detail, so there must be creative license here, and maybe that's really meta and interesting because you're rewriting your therapy sessions based on what you've learnt. You can't escape the fact that you're going to be altering stuff. But then you find out part of the way through that she has been recording all of her sessions and she is writing it down, apparently verbatim, which made it less interesting for me. Is that strange? Because then I felt that there was not that element of reflection or potential alteration, which would be, I don't know, just an added element to think about. But anyway, so she's writing it up from the tapes, but obviously she's not writing up everything because she went to therapy for years and years and years. So she is cherry picking certain things to show the reader. So there is, I suppose, that form of editing, just to a lesser extent than I had hoped. This, I think, is interesting, probably more if you have never been to therapy, because in that respect, you could use it as a tool to help you think about your own things, even though obviously everybody's life is very different and the things that you want to talk about yourself and think about with regard to your brain are going to be really subjective. But there are talking points in here and things that may spark thought processes in your brain, and I think that would be more the case if you had not been to therapy yourself. I have been to therapy for many years, and what I found interesting, I suppose, in this is the different ways that therapists will approach things, because something that was very strange to me, just because it's different, is that the therapist in this book kept on diagnosing her with specific things. Like if there was ever an issue, it was like, oh, it must be this, here are some tablets for it. And I'm not against medication at all, but perhaps it was the way that this was cut. It just meant that it seemed as though every session the therapist was like, oh, here is this other thing you must have based on what you just told me, so here's another drug for that. And that's probably not the way it was. It's just the way that this has been condensed and put together. I thought the most interesting thing about this actually was a tiny bit at the end where the therapist wrote down her response to reading this book afterwards, and she was saying how nervous she was hearing that Baek Sehee was putting it together, and then when she read it back she was noticing her own failings as a therapist and how she could do better next time. That I thought was fascinating, and that's only a tiny part of the book. I'm grateful to have read it. I thought it was a little bit simplistic in places, which sounds like a very harsh thing to say about a non-fiction book, but that is how I felt about it. I didn't feel as though the self-analysis went hugely deep. A lot of it felt quite surface level, almost like this was a beginner's guide to thinking about yourself. And maybe that's exactly what this book is supposed to be, which is fine, but it just meant that I didn't end up loving it as much as I had hoped to. And then I read this book. Have you ever read a book where it's frustrating because it ticks all of your boxes of things that you like? It has all of the elements, which should mean that if this was a recipe, it would be the most delicious meal of your life. But for some reason, you just don't like the taste of it. Let's stop with the extended metaphor. But that's how I felt about this book, which is a shame. So this is The Master Key by Masako Togawa, and this is translated from the Japanese by Simon Grove. Yeah. And this is set in an apartment block, and I really love novels set in apartment blocks or hotels. I like that peering through the keyhole, like looking at lots of different people's lives and how they interact with each other or don't interact with each other, how they're just, you know, passing each other by on the corridors and not knowing the intricacies of each other's lives. I just think that that's really fun. So I thought that I was going to really like this. When I started reading it, it has that vintage crime feel, Agatha Christie type. It is from the 1960s, so that isn't shocking. And also, It feels like reading Only Murders in the Building, which is a TV show that I love. It is someone in this apartment block trying to find out what is happening and trying to solve the mysteries, and they're telling you about it like they're reporting, like it's a podcast, but obviously it's not a podcast because it's from the 1960s. And saying that it makes me think of Only Murders in the Building makes me want to reread this book, even though I didn't like it. But I am always looking for that element in a crime book because I think that it's really fun. But unfortunately, this is one of those books that over-explains to the reader how things happened in, you know, a Poirot kind of way, where the last third of the book is him explaining everything that he's been silently working out in his head. But some of the things that were revealed to me felt quite obvious, which was a shame, and relied on a specific device that I had clocked from the beginning. So that suspense wasn't really there for me. Because it's from the 1960s, also some of the language around it surrounding disability is not the best, and there are a few like tropey things in there. I can contextualize this book, but that also meant it's an element that made me enjoy it slightly less as well. Overall, I just didn't really connect with this book. I love Christie books, or at least I remember loving them. I read all of them when I was about 14, 15. I don't really feel as though I'm in that phase anymore, but if you're still reading a lot of Christie and you enjoy them, then I think you would enjoy this too. But for the point that I am in my life, this one just wasn't a favourite, and that's okay because, you know, we can't love everything that we read. Fingers crossed that the next book is going to bring us back up again when it comes to enjoyment. Today we are actually going out of the New Forest, so we are driving to Salisbury, which I have never been to before, to park, and we're going to go for a day walk there. I think the whole walk is 20 miles long, and I don't think we're going to do the whole walk. There are various parts where you can cut it short, which I think we probably will do, just because of daylight more than anything, to be honest, because it's getting dark at 4 o'clock. If it was getting dark at 9 in the evening, we could, you know, pace ourselves, take our time. Otherwise, we're going to be rushing, and you don't want to be rushing thinking that you're going to be walking back part of the way in the dark when it's not a place that you know very well, even though we have, you know, head torches and all of that stuff. So anyway, you didn't need to know all that. Mr. M and I sometimes do Saturday walking club walks, not with a group of other people, but we just use the Saturday Walking Club website to find walks to do outside of London. And Salisbury is one of the walks that they have on their website, even though it's quite far out of London. If you wanted to come for a day walk, it's an hour and a half from Waterloo, so you'd have to leave at like 5 in the morning or something. But we are, I think, about 40-minute drive from Salisbury. So we're going to park in Salisbury. We're going to go for this walk. I will link it in the description box down below. And yeah, that's what we're doing. So I will insert footage of that here, and I will check back in with you when I have read another book. Goodbye. Good morning. I am cosplaying as a Jedi today. That walk yesterday was, it was really nice. I had a little bit of a breakdown during that walk. It's so weird filming these vlogs because I'm doing it to talk about books and to show you the nice walks that we are going on, and I'm very grateful to be here. But as you know, it's not been a great time recently, and coming away here doesn't mean that I get away from myself. So it's just very weird, really, to be surrounded by very beautiful things and also be feeling incredibly sad. I mean, grief, because this is grieving, grief is a weird thing, and it's just doing this all the time. Like, I'm still getting morning sickness. I'm doing this in inverted commas because it was fake morning sickness because it was the IVF drugs that I was on, but all the estrogen, it's still making me really nauseous in the mornings. And it's just really weird. Like, my body is still thinking that it's pregnant and it's not. So yes, we didn't go on the really, really long walk yesterday. And as I said, I had a bit of a meltdown for the beginning bit of it. That's going to happen. Fine. So I started recording the walk maybe halfway through. And it was really lovely. A lot of it was through fields. And that was kind of hobbity. But going through the smaller villages was really, really lovely. I enjoyed that. We were thinking of going on a really long walk again today, but we both woke up this morning and just thought, actually, now a bit tired, so we're not going to do that. I think also I just feel emotionally tired. I feel like yesterday I lost every ounce, every milliliter of moisture from my body through my eyeballs. So I just feel so drained today. Like, good tired from walking, but just heavy tired from too many feelings. So we're just going to do a little walk today. We're going to go to a place called Boulderwood, which isn't that far from where we are. It's in the New Forest, and there's an arboretum drive. So it has all of these different trees that you can look at, and there are lots of deer there, and maybe some pigs. I don't know. So we'll go there later today. But for now, let me tell you briefly about this book here, which is Indelicacy by Amina Cain, which I really loved. And I was correct in my guess that it was going to be a bit Moshvegian. It's a little bit like Death in Her Hands and also My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Not in the plot, just in the tone, the way that the character speaks holds quite a distance between themselves and you, the reader, and looks at other people in the world in a bit of a clinical kind of way, almost like they're learning how to behave, but with a great sense of disdain for how everybody else behaves. This is a character who we don't know the name of for ages, and then we find out they're called Vittoria later on. As it said in the blurb, it's set in an unspecified time, era and place, which I thought may be a little bit annoying because it does feel historic, but then it'll have phrases like walking around the block, which does not feel historic. But I liked that because it felt uneasy, and it felt as though every time the book allowed you to settle into it and maybe feel as though you understood where it was and where it was going, it would tip you a little bit and shake things up. And the characters are like that too. There's a lot of not fake plot points, but tongue-in-cheek things happening. Like at one point, Vittoria feels sick in the morning and you think, oh, well, she's going to be pregnant, because that's the marker that you put in books and films, the stereotypical marker, which, you know, is based in reality, but is overused as a marker for pregnancy. But that's not what has happened at that point, but it's just trying to lead you off and make you think certain things. And I really liked that. I thought that that worked very well. So the main character at the beginning is a cleaner in a gallery, and she wants to be a writer. So she marries a man who has money so that she can have time to write. And the way that she describes everything around her is as if she's looking at paintings. She's always looking at a painting and trying to work out what's going on behind the specific scene that you've been shown. And then she reaches the conclusion that you're not supposed to. You are supposed to accept only the information that is given to you. And that's what this book is doing too, because it's told in little fragments and you're wondering what's going on outside of these fragments. But the narrator is very adamant that that's not the point. You're supposed to accept the pieces of information that she has given you, and you need to live in the world that she has created for you as a reader. She's enjoying life in an Emerson kind of way. She says, I would listen to a bird cry or the cat and the dog scratching around, and in those moments I felt like a giant ear. I think Emerson was a giant eyeball. Also, she's very polite, but she's learning not to be, but her insults are really funny. When too many men had walked by with this same question or some version of it, I said, "Your face looks like the butt of a wolf and it's interfering with my concentration." So this is a short fragmented novel about a woman who's trying to work out what she wants from the world and what she wants to give to the world, what she wants other people to see of herself. She writes about her life and herself as if she is an art gallery or a museum that she is inviting people to examine, but only when she wants people to pay attention to her. The rest of the time she would like to be ignored. Thank you very much. It is dry, it is funny, and the writing is sparse and filled with intent, and there is definite beauty to that. I would really like to reread this book, actually, because I think that it's one that will become richer the more that you pay attention to it, like a painting. So that is that one. I'm thrilled to have read it, and I have looked up other books that she's written. She's written a short story collection. She also has a book with Laffigue Press, who were one of my favourite presses several years ago. They're hard to get hold of because they're based in the States. But I went to check their website to see if I could get Amina Cain's book with them, and it turns out that they are not operating anymore, which is a sad time. Anyway, I am going to leave you for today with some footage of Boulderwood, and I will come back to you when I have read another book. I hope you're doing okay. Well, my life was just made yesterday by seeing those baby donkeys. Honestly, I was going to say, who knew that baby donkeys were so cute? I think I did know that, but I've never seen them in the flesh, baby ones, and they were just so sweet. I don't think you could tell how small they were in that clip. So here is a clip here with Mr. M next to one of the donkeys. For context, you can see how little they are. Excuse me, my glasses are filthy. So that was a nice little walk to have done yesterday. And now, once I finished cleaning these glasses, I can talk to you about two more books. One which was not a success, and one which was. So the one that was not a success is one that I didn't know if I was going to like, to be honest, anyway, but I wanted to give a go, and that was Spear by Nicola Griffith. I know that this is really beloved, and I'm very sorry if you love it. I love that you love it. I'm very happy for you, but this is just, it's just not my vibe, the writing style. I'm sure that the content itself is something that would appeal to me because it's queer, disabled King Arthur retelling, but the way that it's written is very earnest, very much at the heart of fantasy, very, very rich and full on, and that's just not something that I'm into reading. I was going to say right now, but it's just not what I like reading, and that's okay. So I'm happy that it exists. I'm very happy for fantasy fans that we get Own Voices disabled rep. That's so great. But this one, I'm going to pass on to somebody else. And the other book that I have read since we last spoke is Animals at Night by Naomi Booth. This is a short story collection, and I mentioned in the first clip that I thought that all of these stories centered around animals. That's not actually true. There are animal elements to many of the stories, but it's definitely very much in the background. I loved the first stories in this collection in particular, but what I admired a lot was just the writing style of this author, who I've never read before, and now I really want to read a novel by her. I thought that the stories that particularly shone for me were ones that were talking about young parenthood, which I'm finding quite difficult to read about at the moment, but also I can't deny that it's done really, really well. One of the stories is about a woman who is up breastfeeding at night, and she sees a couple walking past the window at various different nights over the course of a week, and sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're arguing, and then one evening she hears him threaten her, so she has to call 999, and then she's going out into the street to try and find them whilst worrying about her baby. It just feels very primal and raw, and like your instincts are on fire, which is very much what early parenthood is like. So I really liked the way that all of those parallels lined up. I thought that was wonderful. And another favourite was a short story about two sets of parents who meet up having not seen each other for about 3 years. They knew each other at university. Their lives are very different, and they're jealous of each other's parenting skills and also of their jobs. They basically want what each of them doesn't have. I thought that was great. So I think I'm gonna check out one of her novels. I'm not sure which one yet. I'm gonna look into them. But I like this. I didn't love the entire collection, but I can see that she's a writer that I'm going to really enjoy in the future. So that is that. Today we are gonna go to Fritham again, but we're gonna go from Fritham to Frogham. It's a long circular walk, about 4 hours walk, I think. So I will insert footage of that here, and then I think that's the last walk that I will take you on, because I feel as though I have shoved nature down your throat in this video. So yeah, this will be the final walk, and then I will come back to you and talk to you about the final books. And I feel like I'm making very good headway. I was surprised when I was unpacking everything at the beginning of this vlog, thinking I've brought 15 books. Maybe that was a mistake, but I will have got to nearly all of them, I think, which is very cool. So I will see you tomorrow. I'm hopefully not too backlit for this final clip. You may be able to hear some baked potatoes sizzling in the oven. That's going to be our lunch before we head home. So I'm here to talk to you about the last 3 books that I read. One of them turned out not to be one for me, and that was The Loosening Skin by Aliya Whiteley. I think with her work, I tend to enjoy her novellas and her short stories more when she's being really concise and playing around with an experimental an experimental concept in a short amount of time, because I think for me personally that is where she shines. That's definitely her work that I enjoy the most. This is about a world where people shed their skins every 5 to 10 years, and our main character, whenever she sheds her skin, she loses all emotions that she had, and therefore any relationships that she was in at the time completely break down. She can't be around people that she knew as her old self. I really like that concept. It's not the same for everyone in this world. Some people are able to still love the people they're with when they're, I guess, reborn in a way. And then there's this black market for skins being sold illegally, especially the old skins of celebrities. And our main character is called in to investigate the theft of celebrity skins. All of that sounds great, But the way it's written, I just found it to be quite chaotic. It's jumping between so many different timelines and it's very, very fast paced. This is the kind of thing I would prefer to watch as opposed to read. I really like the idea, but the execution isn't my cup of tea. Then I read Leila and the Blue Fox by Kiran Millwood Hargrave and illustrated by Tom DeFreston. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. Let me show you some of the illustrations. It is about a young girl called Leila who is originally from Syria and fled to the UK with her family. She's been living with her aunt and cousin in London. Her mum left them and went to study in Norway. She got a job there studying an Arctic fox, and Leila feels as though her mum has abandoned her and cares more about this Arctic fox, but she decides to go and visit her over the holidays, and they go off on this expedition together to try and find this Arctic fox. It's all about migration and war and fleeing and the pointlessness of borders. It's just so wonderful how Kiran is able to bring all of these topics together. It's something that she's done in Julia and the Shark and her other books as well. It is seamless, and I love that, and I just think it's a brilliant book, especially for the age range that it is aimed at, which is 8 to 12, 13. So I think I'm going to give this to my nephew. It didn't quite emotionally destroy me as much as Julia and the Shark, but it did still get me in the feels. I really loved it. And then now I am reading Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata, translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takamori. This is about, I think, 250 pages long, and I am 100 pages in. It is gross in the way that Earthlings was, but so far there is no sexual violence, which I personally appreciate. And the grossness doesn't feel overly gratuitous like it does in things like Cursed Bunny by Borochong and The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez. I really like the absurdity of these stories. So the first story is about a world where people are made into furniture and jewellery after they die, and our narrator really wants to add lots of things to her wedding list that are made out of human skin and bone, but her partner is grossed out by that and doesn't allow human flesh in the house, and she's trying to work out, you know, how she should proceed. So this description is amazing. She's in a department store. The first floor was full of cheap plastic and glass furnishings, but the second floor had quality furniture on display. Even the armrests of the couch I was now sitting on were of white bone. There were some bowls made from inverted craniums on a row of dining tables at the other side of the store. Hanging from the ceiling was one of the chandeliers with human nail scales that Miho had recommended. Warm light, somewhere between pink and yellow, filtered out through the nails. How happy I would be sitting down to a special dinner with Naoki beneath such a chandelier, with soup in these skull dishes on the table. I glanced down at my own nails. They looked identical to the ones on the chandelier. After I died, how lovely it would be to have them made into such beautiful chandelier for someone to enjoy. So it is that bringing together of gross and dark and twisted with beautiful language and a certain light-heartedness and matter-of-factness, which I think plays into the folklore element of this book. So I'm enjoying it very much. I'm obviously not finished it. I'm nearly halfway through, and I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up once I have finished reading it. So I ended up reading 11 out of the 15 books that I brought with me. I haven't yet read Moomin Valley in November by Tove Jansson, which is translated from the Swedish by Kingsley Hart, but I do plan to read that this month. I also still plan to read Vladimir by Julia May Jonas, because this is a Patreon book club book. I'll be talking about it in more detail over on Patreon. If you want to join, that's linked in the description, but I'll also briefly talk about it in my wrap up on here once I finish reading it. And then the two poetry collections I've been dipping in and out of, but I don't have enough to say about them yet, so I will also talk about those in a wrap up. So thank you very much for joining me for this reading vlog, which I imagine has been quite long. I hope that you liked it. Thank you for keeping me company in the early mornings. Let me know what you've been reading recently. Let me know if you have read any of these books too. If you are new to this channel and you enjoyed this video and would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. And if you like this content and you would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, that's always very kind as well. Link to that will be in the description box down below. I'm sending lots of love to you all, and I'll speak to you soon.